Hello, I'm Ronnie Eldridge. Welcome to Eldridge Company. The most sophisticated women have Judith Leiber's bags hanging from their shoulders or clutched in their hands, and at the same time, many museums are collecting or mounting her work. Jeffrey Sussman tells us in a most delicious way the life stories of two artists, Judith and her husband Gerson Leiber, in the book No Mere Bagatelles. Jeffrey and Judith are my guests today. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you very much.
It's so nice to have you. Your book is wonderful, and it tells this great adventure of these two incredibly talented people. And your life is like a fairy tale, right?
Is it? In a way, yes. Well, you know, I mean, I grew up in Budapest, in Hungary, and I learned the handbag trade because I couldn't get into, you know, originally my parents sent me to London to go to university there, but in the summer of 1939 I came home for the summer, and the war broke out and I never went back. So I had to learn a trade. Yeah. Because I said when the war is over, I'm going to, with my trade, I will go somewhere and work in other countries, because Hungary was very difficult. It was a very tough country.
What was your father do? What kind of work was he doing?
Well, my father was originally worked in a bank that did, you know, he was a director in the commercial bank in Budapest, and he was in charge of grain, and he used to travel to the west and sell, you know, beans and wheat to the western countries. And he worked there for many, many years, and then he decided to retire from that. And first he worked in a company that he was part of as you know, as doing just the same thing, like selling wheat and grain. And then this ended, and he decided to go into the jewelry business, and the jewelry business that he went into was one that sold he sold watches and gold jewelry to, you know, people in the countryside, like the notary and the mayor in little villages, and they paid on the installment plan. And this business was started by one of his brothers-in-law in Austria. And my father decided to do the same thing, and he did that from 1938 or 37 until, you know, everything went to hell and you couldn't do anything anymore. You had to eat.
Jeffrey talks about that life while the first under siege with the Germans, and then later the Russians.
Sure.
And
yes, it was a terrible time. I mean, the Germans were really impossible. It was horrible. And we were just lucky that we survived in Budapest, because most of the Jews even from Budapest were deported.
Yes, you certainly must have been lucky.
We were very lucky because we were in a Jewish house, but we moved from that building to a Swiss protected house that a friend had an apartment in, and 26 people lived in a one bedroom, one living room apartment.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, we were like wall to wall on mattresses.
So did that teach you did that teach you something, how to get along well with people or be more tolerant?
I don't know, maybe it did. I don't know.
It must have been quite an experience.
It was a terrific experience, and you know what the trouble was? That we couldn't stay there because it was very near the Danube, and the Nazis decided that they were going to empty the whole building, and they took, even though we were Swiss protected, they picked us up, and we walked from there to the ghetto, and we were in the ghetto until the Russians liberated us for about 2 weeks or 3 weeks.
Did you live in the basement?
No, they were empty apartments because a lot of people moved out of that area. So we moved into an empty apartment with, you know, some of our cohorts, not all of them. You know, some people that were friends and that lived in the same building with us.
Incredible.
And it was a terrible time.
Yeah. And how old were you?
I was in my early 20s, like 21, 22,
amazing?
23, something like that.
So you went from that
From that,
to now what you have.
from that, you know, when Gus and I came to New York, well, he was a small town boy, and he started painting in Budapest because he didn't, you know, as a kid, he said he could never afford to go to an art school. So he just abandoned the idea. And when he came to Budapest and we became friends, I took him to the Royal Academy, even though there was no Royal anymore. But this was still called the Royal Academy, which was an art school on Andrássy út. And we went there together, and Gus passed the exam that they gave him with flying colors, but he couldn't speak Hungarian at the time, and it was very difficult for him. But there was a very nice young man who was also a student there, whose father was a doctor, and he lived with his parents, and he had a studio in his apartment. And Gus used to go there, and he used to work there with him. And there is a photograph of one of the pictures that this young man painted of Gus and me sitting having coffee in our apartment.
You know, you met Gus. He was a soldier. He's an American.
He was an American soldier, and I met him on the street.
On the street.
That's right.
You know what always amazed me about you, and you explained it. Well, you didn't totally explain it, but what made you want to be a handbag?
Well, you know, my mother had wonderful handbags because my dad used to go to France, and you know, my mother was born in Vienna, so she was very, very understanding of what a beautiful bag looks like and should look like. And Daddy used to bring her bags from the West, she went with him, and they bought them together.
The equivalent of Judith Leiber bags
today.
Well,
I don't know, but
it would be if somebody.
They were very fine handbags, and she had some very good bags, and I didn't know what I was going to do, and I thought, well, it would be a good idea to go into that.
How did you learn to do this?
How did I? I went to work in a little factory, which was the owner was the head of the handbag guild,
that was smart.
It was one of the top places. It was a small shop, but it was very, very, very important there. And I went to work there, and I learned how to make handbags from start to finish. I did everything. I made the patterns. I made, you know, first I learned how to make a purse, how to make a purse pattern, how to cover a mirror. You know, of course, all that is finished today. It doesn't exist anymore.
Used to get handbags with a mirror with a leather around it or something.
Judy was the only person in Hungary, the only woman in Hungary who could make a handbag from start to finish.
Yes.
And when she came to the United States, the only person in the United States who could make a handbag from start to finish.
And she was the first woman to become a member of the guild.
That's right.
In Hungary.
Yes.
So you met Gus. Gus stayed in Budapest and studied, and then you guys left.
Well, no, he was there from the beginning of 45 until the end of 46, and we left together, you know, just before the communism came in.
Yeah. Oh, so
before
that was
the communists came in.
Right, but the war had ended.
Everybody
was afraid of the Russians, right?
Oh yes, well, because first they had the Germans, which was horrible, and the Russians turned out to be just as horrible. It's the same bunch.
So you left and you came to the United States.
I came
to New York.
He brought me.
Yes.
We came to the States on a bride ship, you know, because we.
A bride ship was a ship where all the brides of the
I mean, all the European
forces,
brides, you know. So it was a ship it was originally a Bermuda runner, and we were on the ocean 11 days, and I was sick as a